community. Hope y'all had a second to read over the minutes. And if so, can I get a motion to approve the minutes?
I make a motion to approve the minutes.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, new business. First on the agenda, Mr. LaPerry Howard authorized the adoption and submission of the city's 2021 Consolidated Annual Performance Evaluation Report.
This is what we are required to do every year once we complete an actual program year. We've actually completed program year 2021, although we still have projects that are ongoing. We're required to submit a CAPER report. That's just short for what you just said, Consolidated Annual Performance Evaluation Report. It's basically our accomplishment data that is submitted to HUD on the projects that we allocated funding to from last year. So, and this is called for an adoption and submission to HUD.
Sounds good. Make a motion.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
LaPerry, you still got the show. Keep
Yes,
running.
sir. Item number 2 is something that we do every year because we're the responsible entity for the Tuscaloosa Housing Authority's environmental review assessments. This is just saying that they're in compliance. They're in compliance with 24 CFR Part 58.6 for their 2022 capital fund budget and rolling year 5-year plan for 2022 through 2026. And this is for authorization for the mayor to sign a letter. If you look in your packet, the actual projected grant award for them, and again, this is projected. It is $3.1 million, and with that funding, they are planning on doing construction activities for Crescent East renovations, Branscombe Playground and site improvements, and Haycourt unit and site improvements.
Are there any particular numbers of units for Hayes Court and so how would that be determined? You know,
The dollar amount.
so
Yeah.
So when would we know that?
Since this is projected, they have not received the awards. Once they know the award amount that they'll get, they'll let us know.
Okay.
Yeah, but this again is just letting them know that they're in compliance with the environmental reviews because we are a responsible entity.
Yes, sir. So moved, Mr. Chair.
Second.
All in favor?
Sound like you got a question?
I did, but I guess I'll reserve that for later because it's kind of like a public safety issue.
Next up is Heather Hill. Resolution authorizing the amendment for the city's 2020 home agreement with Habitat for Humanity Tuscaloosa.
This would amend our 2020 agreement for the home program with Habitat. They were already authorized for $100,000 in 2020. We went back, they had some contracts, they had some leftover funds. So we went back and gathered all that up and consolidated under this one contract.
Okay.
It includes funding from 2017, 2018, and 2019. That's a total of $9,448.54.
Okay.
So that'll bring that contract up to $109,448.54.
Good deal.
I think that's good. Let me ask you one question though. Where were those funds normally allocated to? 2017, 2018, 2019? Where were they allocated? Who were they allocated to? Is
For
that
Habitat. So
okay?
the reason that we can just add it to the contract is because it's already programmed in the action plan for them to have it.
Gotcha. So the public needs to know that, so that no one would think that somebody just chose somebody else. Okay. Thank you.
Can I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right. We got Margaret DeSharley. I made that happen. Thank you, Heather. Is that it? Are you still? Oh, Margaret and Heather. Margaret's name was first. But carry on, Heather. Community planning and development programs.
So we want to use this opportunity to discuss our office's proposal for the program year 2022 action plan.
Okay.
Appreciate that. Okay. Yeah, let's start there. So when we were thinking about our 2022 action plan, we thought about, because we're in our 5-year plan, it started in 2020. So this is the 3rd action plan out of that 5-year plan. Our first action plan, we were responding to the needs of COVID. That action plan was actually developed at the beginning of COVID as well as that comp plan. Our second action plan, we looked at reconnecting to the emerging needs of our community while we were still in the pandemic. And so now we're kind of getting to the light at the end of the tunnel. And we wanted to kind of think about, you know, the vulnerabilities of the people that we serve, kind of what was exposed during that pandemic. And, you know, we kind of had a little energy thinking about it. We kind of saw some of that energy in the last CD meeting when we were reallocating funds to housing units and youth service programs. So we kind of wanted to think about, hey, how do we sum that up? Recharge.
You got me
So we're
recharged.
recharging, reinvigorating our communities, energizing.
Right.
So that's kind of how we're approaching this 2022 action plan.
Okay.
Oh, I went the wrong way, sorry. So our mission in our office is to advance social and economic justice through the creation of strong, sustainable, and inclusive communities. Anytime we start developing our action plans, we like to go over the national objectives for the 2 programs that we're planning for. So CDBG, our national objectives are benefiting low to moderate income persons, preventing slum and blight, and meeting urgent need. The national objectives for home provide safe, decent housing to low income households, leverage private sector participation, shared responsibility. So let's start back at our consolidated plan because it is the document that governs how we approach our action plans. It's our guidance for our implementation for each 5 of the subsequent action plans that follow. As I mentioned, this was developed at the beginning of the pandemic. These priorities were conceived based on stakeholder input. We did a community assessment. Community partners provided input. We had our analysis of impediments to fair housing choice. We had our affordable housing study that was also involved in developing these priorities. So I'm just going to go through the priorities quickly before we move on to the next section. This first priority is increase and maintain affordable housing. What that looks like in action is new housing construction, rehabilitation of housing, acquisition, that's like our down payment assistance program, and tenant-based rental assistance. Our next priority is increase the community's ability to access and maintain affordable housing. What that priority looks like in action is our housing counseling program. So that's your foreclosure counseling, pre-purchase, post-purchase counseling, rental counseling. Also, our partnership that we've had with Legal Services Alabama. They have offered homeless prevention services, which has been crucial over the last couple of years. And then also down payment assistance also increases access to affordable housing. I want to mention with these first 2 priorities, these are our top priorities. So affordable housing is the top priority in our consolidated plan. I want to make this statement from the National Low Income Housing Coalition. They state that there are broad long-term effects to affordable housing. People who are affordably housed earn more over their lifetime, they live longer, and their children do better in school. So those are kind of our driving factors of why we hone in on affordable housing the way that we do, and making sure that we preserve these units, we increase them,
Right.
and people can have access to them. Our next priority is promoting the development and stabilization of communities by addressing the needs of individuals and families to include youth, seniors, and other vulnerable populations. This priority in action looks like mental health services, so like family counseling services, food assistance, medical assistance, our youth service programs, Benjamin Barnes,
Right.
Boys and Girls Club, so forth. Our next priority is promote public infrastructure and facility investments that promote equitable access for underserved populations. That's construction of parks, green space, cultural center construction, reconstruction of roads. Our last priority is promote access to employment, training, and educational opportunities. That's apprenticeship programs, career counseling, job skills training, even some of the things that you see Habitat doing with their affordable housing development. That's part of this as well. Now I'm going to turn it over to Margaret, and she's going to walk you through our action plan process.
Heather, I appreciate you. So you learned a little bit about our overall navigational system. Our consolidated plan, that's what it is. It's a map for us. So the action plan is that map. When we're hitting the road, when we hop in that car and we decide that we're gonna take Tuscaloosa to the next level, we're using this action plan to help us get there. So for 2022, there are elements to the action plan that we always want to make sure that we prioritize and that we are implementing. One of the things that we do is that our application process is competitive. We do not provide funds on a whim. Our applicants undergo 2 levels of scrutiny, and we'll talk about that later during the application process. We do a holistic organizational review. We're looking at how does this organization operate? Does it have the capacity to handle the level of oversight and compliance that's required for federal funding? We have standardized assessments, so we have a starting point, a baseline for everybody to make a decision about the applications that we receive. We want to align our activities to our core beliefs here at the City of Tuscaloosa, but also our national objectives, making sure that whatever we invest in activity-wise is going to get us closer to our overall impact. And then the last thing is impact-oriented. Is it going to make a difference?
Right.
The application process. So we combine CDBG and home together. Those are 2 separate grants, but we combine them into our CPD. It's like, what's the name of that thing? Megatron? Like it's like a super grant program. We combine them together. And we have a 2-part application process. The first is our pre-application. It's just eligibility determination. We're just looking to see if your activity is actually going to meet our goals. The second one is our final application. And that is where we do a deep dive into the activity that the nonprofit proposes and its organization and its finances. So we have 11 steps in our application process. We are currently on step number 7, which is funding recommendations. And after tonight, hopefully we will get to the point where we can get to step number 9, where we have our citizen comment period. One thing I do want to say about all of our activities in CNS and under CDBG and home, these activities are intended to be well planned out, well thought out, well reviewed by our public. We don't do anything in these grants unless it has been vetted and verified by our constituency. So that means that it requires us to be open, it requires us to be transparent, and it requires us to seek out input from all of our citizens. It's not as flexible as some may think that it is. So let's move on. So we're going to talk about the money. This year, we expect to get over $1.3 million in those combined funds. These funds are dedicated solely to improving the quality of life for low-income persons and families in Tuscaloosa. Currently, Tuscaloosa has about a 20% poverty rate. That means 1 in 5 Tuscaloosa residents can benefit directly from these funds. The expectation from HUD when we apply for these funds and we're graciously granted them, the expectation is that this $1.3 million is a supplement and it's secondary to the investment that is made by the city of Tuscaloosa. So let's look at our numbers across the year. So we have 22, 20, 21, and 22 all together, so you can see kind of a comparison of where we were and where we are now. If you will notice, in support of Heather's statement about the importance of affordable housing, our home program received almost $45,000 in increase this year. HUD is serious. Affordable housing is the #1 priority. It is the prime objective, like Star Trek. CDBG, we had a decrease, and we expected that. We've had a lot of funding through our CARES Act come through our city, and so we understand that HUD is going to make accommodations for what they've already given. You know, your parents, I give you something, I ain't gonna give you much more. Make use of what you have.
Right.
So we're at about a $15,000 increase for our 2022 funding. So we're getting to the juicy part. Program project recommendations. So I'm gonna talk about CDBG, and when I'm done, I'm gonna turn it back over to our resident affordable housing expert, Ms. Heather Hill, and she'll walk you through the affordable housing and the home aspect of our projects. CDBG, this is the breakdown. So if you notice, we have program admin and we have section 108. That is for the Jemison building, which is now the Dinah Washington Cultural Arts Center. We pay on this every year. Like the kids say, this comes off top. There's nothing that we can do with this. This goes into ensuring that our program continues and also to pay the debts that we owe. So for programming, for projects, we have $551,000. We have a program cap. So our public services, the activities that we have with the Boys and Girls Club or Big Brothers Big Sisters, we can only spend up to $122,000. So out of that $1.3 million that y'all saw, we can only give an organization, what, 10% of that? 15% of that, okay. So, non-public service. Our non-public service activities, we're about 430K. So those are the bricks and sticks. That's doing infrastructure, that's doing rehabilitations. Those are things that affect areas. Those are things that not necessarily are educational or anything of that nature. So program administration and planning, this is pretty boring, but we do planning. Every year we have to make sure that every single activity we do, even our program and administration, has to go through an environmental review process. HUD wants to make sure that we do not expend any funds on any activity that is going to have an adverse effect on our environment. So when we're doing paperwork, we still got to let them know that that's not going to adversely affect our environment. Administration, that is for the planning. That is for the actual implementation through our office. Section 108 loan repayment, every year, $100,000.
How much is left on that?
I believe it was
So,
$558,000.
Yeah, we do. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's good deal.
Keep my time. Okay, so we're going to talk about our public service activities, but before we get into that, I want to make a couple of statements. So, first things first, when we receive our funding, the city of Tuscaloosa applies for HUD funding. The city of Tuscaloosa is not obligated to open those fundings for any type of application. The city of Tuscaloosa, should it elect to implement programs in-house, is well within its right to do so. The city, as precedent and tradition, has opened up our CDBG and home allocations for application. So this year, we wanted to make sure that we were not throwing money down a hole, that it wasn't a money pit. So we started to think about the impact. Like we talked about, it gotta be impact oriented. What can we do? How can we change things? And we decided that we were restricting our NOFA, our Notice of Funding Availability, to two types of activities. The first is youth services. I don't think that there needs to be an explanation as to why. We've seen the news. We've
Right.
gone through Project Unity.
Indeed.
We understand that the need for our youth is there.
Right.
That there is a definite desire for strategic, streamlined investment
Services.
into our youth. The second thing is our prime objective, affordable housing. Does it keep people in homes? Does it put people in homes? Heather talked about the critical nature of affordable housing, how it is the basis of any functioning society and any functioning municipality. So we wanted to make sure that those two areas, that was our focus. So we did not accept any applications that were outside the realm of youth services and affordable housing. We also said, we're not funding any applicant less than $25,000. Because here's the kicker about CDBG. If I gave you $500, I have to do the same amount of work for those $500 as I would for a $5 million project. Let's be smart.
I like that.
So, $25,000 was the minimum. As you saw before, we only had $122,000 to give out. So we're going to talk about where we went. The first is the community mentoring program for Big Brothers Big Sisters. They asked for 25, we're giving it to them. The reason why we're giving it to them is because they have a consistent history of providing one-on-one mentorship for children in the community. They have a national program that backs them up, and they have seen great success. Their organization, they have performed very well during my tenure here. The second one, after school and summer programs. This is with the Boys and Girls Club of West Alabama. They requested $100,000. We awarded them $25,000. This is to support their activities at the JC Park facility, but also their activities in New Heights Resource Center in West Tuscaloosa, the old Stillman Heights building.
Right.
So they want to make sure that they expand their services, that we are capturing our youth, which is ages 13 to 19. Those are one of the key gaps in services that we've seen across the community. And they've done a great job. They serve a significant number of children. And one of the things about Boys and Girls Club in West Alabama is that the children that participate in this program, they have a 99% graduation rate for participants in the Boys and Girls Club activities in their programs. That's unbeatable. The second was third is the Tuscaloosa Homeless Prevention Program. We talked about keeping people in housing. Legal Services Alabama provides free or low-cost legal representation for persons who are facing homelessness or have barriers to housing. They requested $60,000, and we funded them again, the base, $25,000. The reason why we wanted to fund legal services is because housing is a cycle. It's a circle. Heather loves to say it. It's the circle of life. You have to address it holistically. You just can't focus on building houses. If I can't afford to get into a house because I have an eviction or my credit's messed up, how can I get into housing? Legal services, they were critical during COVID, and we feel that they would have a significant impact this year as well. Street outreach. This is a new program for us. This is funding temporary emergency services. They requested $50,000. Again, we're funding them that base of $25,000. Legal services is a new addition to our emergency solutions grant, and they are providing services in the community to real, unhoused, unsheltered individuals and families. There is some amazing work that is coming out of our partnership with Temporary Emergency Services, and this program or this activity will help support that partnership. The last is our comprehensive housing counseling. Housing counseling is through our office, and it provides a plethora of services to ensure that our community, once again, is able to access and maintain housing. Housing counseling provides post-purchase, pre-purchase, eviction counseling, default counseling, rental counseling, tenant counseling, fair housing counseling, budget counseling, landlord counseling. Like, housing counseling for the city of Tuscaloosa is a crucial element to ensuring that we have equitable access to housing. Because we can throw a house up, but if we do not teach people the proper methods of how to access those houses, we're doing nothing. Housing counseling begins to equal the playing field for our low to moderate income friends and neighbors. So now we're gonna move on to non-public service activities. We had $429,000. The first, we awarded $100,000 to Habitat for Humanity. Habitat for Humanity is going to continue their critical home renovation and repair. We have worked with them, partnered with them since 2014, and they have ran the critical home repair program in its current iteration since 2016. They intend to rehabilitate 14 houses. The second is Springer Estates Infrastructure. We have partnered with Tuscaloosa Housing Authority to build additional affordable housing. The Springer Estates land is in West Tuscaloosa. It's going down, what is it, Culver Road? Yes, it's going down Culver Road. And we anticipate having about 50 homes, over 50 homes when it's done. That's major. And
It really is.
because we only get $1.3 million, we've had to phase it. We've had to phase the funding to them to help them get the houses built. So this is the next phase.
So that money goes to the contractor?
It goes to the contractors, yes, to do the infrastructure. So they're doing curb and gutter, utility installation, preparing the ground for vertical construction. So yeah, and it's a lot of money. It is important. So that is it for CDBG. Anybody got any questions real quick?
The Springer Estates, that's near, by Greenview? That's
Yes.
by- Yeah, that's the,
Culver,
yeah,
yeah.
right behind Greenview.
Mm-hmm.
All right, I'm gonna pass it on to him.
Could I ask you a question?
Yes, sir.
Going back to that counseling you were talking about,
Yes.
I think that's very much needed, but do we get a lot of people
Yes.
that ask for it?
Yes, sir.
And how do they know to ask for
I'm
it?
sorry.
Man, this office is wide. Let me help her here. I know the people that run through me alone. This office is wide open for every need that's in the community. I'm
Well,
telling
I mean,
you,
I know they want to help.
Yeah, no, I'm just saying that they have a program set aside for, and I'm not
No,
an expert in this field, but I'm just saying how many times I called them for home
Okay.
assistance, counseling for
Utility
this,
assistance.
utility,
Yeah.
people
Counseling
need.
also has homeless services too. They also
Right.
provide homeless services, but people know about it. Number one, word of mouth. It's been around
Okay.
for a very long time.
Sure.
But we are in the process of revamping our outreach and marketing for our housing counseling. So you will have the ability to provide them with a dedicated number
Yeah.
and dedicated website so they
That's
can,
good
so
Oh,
that
you-
they can get the information.
for
they need.
advertisement purposes. That's good.
Yes,
That'd
sir.
be good to put it out there.
But until
Yeah, I
then,
think it's great.
you can just call up
Just
here.
put it
like
out
I
there
do.
more.
What?
Until then, you can just call up here like I do.
Yeah, they answering and working. I'm telling you, they.
Oh, I don't doubt it.
Oh yeah, no doubt. We saying the same thing in different ways.
Yeah.
All right, thank you, CDBG.
About housing. And I appreciate it. We're gonna go to the last leg of this presentation, which is our home funding. It's a total of $649,469.42. I know you're like, that's more than what she had on there before, but we got an extra $130,947.42. We get program income. We recapture funds when people, have a comeuppance, they move out of their house, they return their down payment assistance. So We gather all that up to put it back into the program to assist somebody else. So that's where we get this total from. So 10% comes off for program administration. It's about that $52,000. That pays for salaries and expenses that are incurred for that program. It also supports a lot of the counseling services as well. We charge that to admin on both sides to cover those expenses. Community Housing Development Organization operating costs, or what we call the CHODO. Right now, we have only one CHODO that is certified, that's Habitat for Humanity. They annually have to recertify their status as a CHODO. Because they operate as a CHODO, we often allot them CHODO operating costs so that they can take care of some of their overhead expenses in developing affordable housing. So that's a little under $26,000. Then we have our CHODO set aside. So the home regulations require that we set aside 15% of our annual allocation. It has to go to the CHODO. I don't know if it'll always be like that. There's an uprising that's trying to remove that requirement. But that's where we are for right now. So that's almost $78,000. And that will go to Habitat for Humanity for the development of affordable housing. Now we have our affordable housing construction. So on top of that CHODO set aside, which they will use to develop affordable housing, there's also the other amount that we're allocating, which is $193,000 to go towards the development of affordable housing. That will probably get us about 3 units. Habitat is allowed to retain their program income. So you saw that program income I was talking about at the beginning that comes from our other subrecipients, but they're allowed to retain it and they put it right back into the construction of housing. So that's why I said we'll probably get 3. It's ranging from about a little over $100,000 for construction. It's going up just because materials are going up. But they use this in conjunction with their program income to develop affordable housing. We also have the Tuscaloosa Housing Authority. So CDBG is doing the infrastructure. Home takes care of the vertical construction. Their request was for $300,000. We are allocating $300,000. Now we have, for the last couple of years, just been kind of sitting tight because we had to get that infrastructure done before we could do vertical construction again. So we've already done 18 houses, and that was in the area that didn't require infrastructure up front. But once we finished that 18th house, we had to stop for a while to get that interior done. So we are planning this fall to start phase 5, which is vertical construction again. So over the last couple of years, in our action plans, the council has been allocating funds to the housing authority, and they will use those funds in combination with the $300,000. That will take them. I skipped the thing. Okay. That will take them to a little over $1 million for construction of phase 5. That will get us anywhere from 5 to 7 houses. The housing authority also puts their own funds into these phases for construction. So when we mix it all together, we'll get just under $2 million for this phase of construction. Once they sell those houses, that money comes back as program income to go back into the program to come back out again. So you'll probably see that in the next action plan where we'll be programming it again.
So the bulk of our, the CDBG monies, I think, the Housing Authority and Habitat. So those are the two major, allocations, I
Yes,
think.
for
Yes.
CDBG, yes, sir.
Okay, so Habitat gets like almost 400, as I was calculating right here. Then the Housing Authority is almost like 400,000.
So for CDBG?
Yeah.
Yes, sir. So Habitat gets $100,000 in CDBG for rehab. And then they get, on average, anywhere from $200,000 to $300,000 a year for the infrastructure,
Construction.
for housing.
Interesting.
And they are the two organizations, I mean, Habitat, naturally, like I said, they are the only organization that we've worked with that's been able to maintain their CHOTO status. So our partnership is kind of,
Heather, remind what CHOTO is.
it's the Community Housing Development Organization. So they have certain requirements to reach that status. It looks at board composition, it looks at their capacity, experience, their budget, how they rely on grant funding versus their own funding. So I have to annually underwrite that application to see if they meet the requirements as a CHOTO.
So what, on an average, how many applications do you get from different agencies who perhaps may or may not meet the requirements to be a CHOTO, whatever it's called?
So, in my tenure, so I started working with Home back in 2012. I've only had 3 applications for CHOTO certification and Habitat selection.
So are there, if you've only had 3, are those others encouraged to do more, or are they told what to do after you make your assessment, what they need to do to come up to par?
So,
How does that go? I don't know. This is my
one of
first time
them
dealing.
is,
We used to have more than that.
yeah, one of them is not operating in construction any longer, so
Yeah.
that's on that one. The other, they haven't sought to apply or maintain that status.
Is that community service programs?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Now, they back,
Are they built out?
in the
They used to,
nineties,
Mr. Barnett.
the
Louis
nineties, they
Barnett.
maintained
Yeah,
their CHOTO status
They did
and
several
they were annually
opinions.
funded, CHOTO set aside funds.
Right.
So, you know, sometimes things shift,
Yeah.
and, you know, it's kind of how it is. I mean,
It seems
Habitat
to
is
be-
in a position right now where, you know, that kind of makes them able to annually get funded because they're the only ones that meet those eligibility
Then you
requirements.
see the work. You see
Perry
the
and I were
work.
talking about that yesterday. You know, about Mr. Barnett was the big show back when I first started. He did all Alberta states, and he
Yeah.
did, he did the first handicapped.
Oh, wow.
And let me also say this, that, Home, back in 2013 got a facelift, and
Yeah.
I think that they halfway think that, you know, I'm a banker sometimes, because I have to have banker type skills. So anybody that is funded with Home, I have to underwrite them. So I have to sit there and determine, are they going to make it to the finish line? Do they have all the components that they need? Capacity, revenue, you know, access to financing, can they get to the finish line? And that is a product of, you know, a nice article in the Washington Post that forced Congress's hand to put more stringent rules on Home
Yeah.
that we all enjoy.
Yeah.
You
But I
don't
mean,
wanna throw that money down a hole.
you don't want to throw it down a hole.
Don't do it.
And Home is not going to let you throw it down a hole. They're gonna make you dot all your i's and
Cross your
T's.
T's.
Like, you're gonna know that you know that you know that you know
Yeah.
that they got what it takes to pull the project off. So that's the other thing you have to take into consideration. CDBG has a little bit more flexibility to, like in their public service, to develop agencies, not so much in home. That capacity is a must, it's a necessity, and I wouldn't be able to get it off the ground anyway, to approve it. So that's kind of the difference. We kind of use CDBG to develop, public service, newer agencies that, have a really great program, and we can kind of work with them to learn how to navigate grant world, but not so much in home.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
No, ma'am. Great presentation. So we got this calls for a vote. The
Yeah.
first one was
The presentation, then we have this actionable item
okay.
here.
So we did this was all part of the presentation. Now we're on item number 5. Okay, which should be easy because we've been breaking it down. Okay. Authorizing the Office of Community and Neighborhood Services to advertise a summary of the City of Tuscaloosa action plan for 2022.
I'll make a motion.
Second.
All in favor?
I,
Thank you,
y'all so
guys.
much.
I'm gonna be honest with you. This when I come here, when I leave Community Development Block Grant or CNS, I mean I have a good feeling. I need to leave all my committees meeting feeling like I'm accomplished. I'm a part of something.
Recharged is how
Yeah,
you-
recharge is what I'm saying. Thank y'all for recharging me. Y'all need a motion to adjourn.
wait, I wanted to ask you now.
Sure.
I hadn't decided the chairman yet, but I would like, once we get all past this, I think it'd be great to have the housing authority come here and address this committee because,
Yes, please.
yeah, because, we get, I know I do, there's so many questions about who's under the housing authority.
Right.
What are your restrictions?
Yeah.
Because a lot of times people are not abiding by what they're supposed to do, but then the city gets sometimes when the finger pointed at them when it's actually should be patrolled by the
housing.
THA.
Yeah, so that's why I said my issues was more, it wasn't a funding issue, it's more of a, if we fund them, then and I have public safety concerns, why don't I get more feedback? So whichever committee, wanna bring it to this one,
And then I'd like to also know, where are we on the future?
Okay.
Where's the next Mackenzie Court or Rosedale gonna be?
Very good question.
What are we gonna ever do with Crescent East? I know, Branscombe, I know it's county, but still it very much affects us.
want them to do a presentation at our next month.
I'm fine.
You think you good with it?
I'm sure.
They don't come for agency funding. Other than this, are they gonna be here for agency funding? No? Yes?
I don't think they.
No.
Okay, then, yeah, so the next CDB, okay, yeah.
If that gives them time to put something together,
No,
because
this is good, perfect, yeah.
Y'all interested, I'm sure they
But I think that's a great idea, Counselor.
Yeah, that is a
I
good
think that is
idea.
an excellent idea.
good. Well, I thank you, and I just they just got a lot. There's a lot of questions.
Definitely.
We're ready to pile them on. So
Yeah,
we set
and they may not want to come here.
I mean, they'll talk about their plans.
I know.
They got it mapped
Chris,
out.
Yeah.
they've done. I mean, they really do a good job when I can. But there's just like we got a recent thing about a certain apartment complex, and
Yes.
so there's just a lot of things that I think we need to be refreshed on whose jurisdiction is what.
And I don't think in this particular apartment complex is privately owned, so it's not under the Tuscaloosa Housing Authority.
Okay.
But it wasn't. Now I don't know it was under Pinnacle Realty one time when I used to contract with them, but we'll see.
And also there's some. It's interesting to me, Cassius. I don't know if you know this. There's some people that.
Oh yeah. So
Okay, we only have me and you.
Okay. So yeah.
But also sometimes the Northport Housing Authority will have authority in Tuscaloosa. And that's something, in other words,
Right.
when I called THA once, they said, "Oh, that's the Northport Housing Authority."
Okay.
And a lot of times it's how our citizens are, they are in Northport, but they think it's our housing
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I think that'll be good. I think that's the first step to having communication and opening the floor.
Sure, I do
And
too.
keeping everybody that has a hand in
The media just made that.
Welcome, Ravenback. Before we adjourn.
Hey,
Hey,
media
Matthew,
is
Matthew.
hey, where's security?
Hey,
Jabari
Jabari,
thinks he can just
it's
take
Jabari's
it.
fault though. It's Jabari's fault. So
I have
can
not been here, I haven't.
can I make a motion to adjourn?
I'll
Can we get a
second.
motion? Second, all in favor say